Okay, so this is going to be a fun one, all about psychology, all about behavioral science. And remember that the real estate transaction is primarily about communication. So what we're talking about today, I reference in a hell of a lot of other videos, and it's about agent profiling. Now, as far as I'm concerned, there's three main agent profiles: emoters, transactors, and processors. These three haven't failed me yet. I haven't really found the need to create a fourth. Like it's quite succinct, and that's from across a hell of a lot of relationships with real estate agents here on the Sunshine Coast, of which we have a lot, 600 odd. So this is going to be a good little guide, but the only caveat is for you guys is I'm going to try and give some tips and tricks to how to shortcut, how to identify them, because this is kind of where a buyer's agent comes into their own. We have long-standing established relationships with a myriad of agents across all three profiles, and we get to adapt our process on the fly, how we interact with these agents. Because of that, you can't leverage that as a buyer, especially if it's the first time you've met this selling agent and it just happens to be your dream home. So I'll try and keep the information really relevant and specific and actionable so you can get straight out there and put this to good use, because again, it is your competitive edge. It forms a really, I think, a vital part of it. Psychology of selling, psychology of buying, it's instrumental. So I'd encourage you to pay attention particularly to this one, and really when you pick up the phone or when you meet an agent face to face, try and put yourself in a position where you're speaking their language. And I'll explain what that means. Let's get straight into it. All right, first up are transactors. They're the easiest ones to define, and they're the simplest ones to deal with. The reason why is because it's literal. They just want to transact. They just want a deal done. They're predominantly old school agents or guys that are a little bit more pragmatic about how they conduct themselves in their business. So it is the numbers stacking up, the motivation's there, getting signatures on paper, I've sold an asset. It's as easy as that. The way we engage transactors is to make their lives as easy as possible. It is as simple as that, removing every single element of friction. I mean, yes, it goes across all three, and it's what we do as buyers agents day in, day out as our bread and butter. But more to the point with transactors, it's going to yield a better result when you're focused on that with transactors than when you're focused on that with processors. Actually, you have to be careful to be too direct with processors, because you can actually put them offside, and we'll talk about that as well. So with transactors, it's probably easiest to conduct a couple of role plays, a couple of scenarios where we can put this to use, and you can kind of go, aha, now I know what Ash is talking about. I've met these people before. Transactors are results driven. And the way that we identify them is that they are quite to the point. They're approachable. It's not blunt, but it is concise. It's information that you need to move you from one step to the next to get the property sold, or in our perspective, to be able to purchase the property. These guys spend minimal time in the fluff, minimal time in the pitch. It is qualifying you as a buyer, whether you're in or you're out, and then they know whether to spend their time with you or not. So you can feel like it's brash, but it's brass tacks, it's business. It's the basic fundamentals of going, are you going to transact on this property or are you not? If so, I will give you the time of day, and I will be your best friend, and I will show you exactly what you need to do. So again, that's why we want to disseminate and say these people aren't necessarily harsh or blunt. They're just laser focused on putting a deal together. which is great because when we meet these people, it's so good. It's so good. And this is why. It's because when you're a savvy buyer and you approach a transactor, the more preparation and the knowledge that you can get behind the scenes and the more prepared that you can come to these men and women as sales agents who are transactors, the more likely you are to be able to purchase. Buyers, by nature, ask a lot of questions. The less questions you ask and the more assertive you are and the more confident and knowledgeable you approach these guys, the more likely you are to transact. Hopefully this is all making sense because it is just about making their lives easier. It is just about putting together a deal. So, everything I've spoken about in other videos about gathering as much information behind the scenes, where to find that from, that is going to be the crux here because we're not going to bother with transactors, and I certainly don't as a buyer's agent, giving them verbal stuff. It doesn't go anywhere. They'd rather just be able to put it on a contract and put it in front of their seller and get a yes or no. And they're more likely to tell you the number it needs to be to get the deal done because that's what the seller wants, or there's some room to move and we just make it happen. Now, that's a key differentiator with processors who will actually slow the process down to fit a process, to feel like everyone's got a win-win. They're very highly trained on presenting first offers, getting formal counters, and doing that thing. Transactors, the back and forth isn't there. Yeah, mate, we're good to go. No, mate, it was a no. Okay, cool. We know where we stand. It's really, really simple. So the way to get traction with these guys is to do all the research you can behind the scenes, come to them with concise information about your position, your willingness and preparedness to buy the property, and hold them to really tight timeframes. It's kind of cool. You can press these guys more than you can processors. A really good example of this is a transactor. You can go, hey guys, all right, so thanks for showing me through the property. I've done up a letter of formal offer that I want to send across to you. It's just the best way that I've found to get cut through with agents on properties that we like. It structures everything about, everything you need to put it to contract form and to present to your seller. And our best and final, just to keep it clean. We're not about the back and forth. We know where we see value. We're savvy buyers. We hope this is in line with where your seller is wanting to transact. Brilliant. Now you say, and before we move on, the other thing is, and we've got a couple of properties we're looking at the same time. So really, if we can have a decision within the next 24 hours, it's kind of what we need. Otherwise, this offer will have to be withdrawn and we can have a conversation should the other one not pan out. Create urgency with transactors. They're like, brilliant, this is what I need. Yep, great, done, move on. You do that with processors and you hit a stumbling block. Primarily, it's going to be, hey guys, this expires in 24. Whoa, that's not I can't do that. So what I've told my sellers is that I will conduct the open on the Saturday. So we're here doing this now. On Monday, I'll perform all the callbacks and get people's written feedback. I'll then work with my admin team to construct contracts where people are confident and then present them on the Tuesday night at 5 p.m. We have a set meeting where I go and see my sellers and round up the offers and discuss them on that evening. So guys, you can't be part of that if you need a decision within the next 24 hours. Right? This is something where the urgency actually can work against you if you've picked your target wrong. So that's really where we can start talking about processes. So as I've already covered, guys, processes are people who have a process. Ta-da! The big reveal. This is really important to understand. Oftentimes, these guys are in a franchise model or have come from a franchise model where the training is really granular and the scripts and the dialogue that I've talked about in other videos that agents, acutely designed, and they're so specific to get desired answers and outcomes and to walk a buyer through a process. Everything is curated content that comes out of the mouths of these sort of agents. And that's okay because it gives us clues as buyers into how to deal with said agents to get traction. And there's, again, I've said this already in a lot of content, but there's not a good or bad. There's just different. And like a lot of people out there as well that we meet, there's introverts and there's extroverts. And you can walk into a room of introverts and say something and just be personable, and that can be seen as arrogant. And you can go into a room of extroverts and you can say exactly the same thing and be seen as shy. Your audience and your perception is from the other person's perspective. So it's not as much control that we have from the outset. It's about working with these other people as soon as we can identify, as quickly as we can identify how they operate and mimic it, emulate it. Then the faster we can get on their level, the less mistakes and friction that we're going to have in our communication, the easier it is going to be to transact, and the competitive edge that we have over other potential buyers starts to grow. That was a really complex thing to kind of say. So apologies, because it's not as convoluted, it's not as intricate as it may seem. We switch from the assertion of just going, this is what we've already done for you, to how would you like us to proceed? How do we best proceed? What are the next steps from here? That is language they're going to understand, they're going to thrive on, and they're going to grab you and just be like, these people are my perfect buyer. Oh, geez, if you get the status of perfect buyer in the eyes of a real estate agent, especially when it's in front of a home that you've already identified you want to buy, let's go. So it's about working with them. So when we talk about processes, we really do say that it can be a fair few steps and you need to be patient and understanding, but also at the same time, everything becomes a known. And the questions you ask around each step, you're going to get scripted, particular, specific information to know where you stand. If you can stay a step ahead, the processes we can talk about probably in its own right, in its own video, on what some of the common steps are and some of the scripts and dialogues at each one. You know what? Deciding now probably is worth it. But for the definitions part of it and the actionable part of it, just to have it in the back of your mind when you start to hear something that sounds scripted, or that there are where would you like to start? Where do you see value? Anything that talks about a process, the process from here, guys, is, or I'll be looking to round up offers on this day at this time, or close a business, then I present, I've got a meeting set. Anything that sounds like they're working to a process, just put it in your mind, great. I need to make their life easy now by playing along whatever steps they need me to go through. Yes, absolutely, great, no worries. What would you like that in? What format? How do I express this? Great. And just all the information, nice and seamless, that is going to keep you ahead of the competition. To go, hold on a second, no, I haven't done this before. I need to ask a few questions. No, before we do that, and they're just like, man, are you playing as you're either in my process or you're making my life difficult because I'm having to go off script and really think about things as opposed to just moving through the path of least resistance. So it gives you a bit of an overview of what it looks like from a transactors and a processor's view of the world and a view of the transaction and how they put a deal together with buyers, how they work buyers. Probably clear as mud at this stage, and we'll talk more about just some quick fire things that we can do at open homes or when we pick up the phone to make these identifications. But the third one I leave to last for a reason, because emoters by definition are complex. Emoters, you know what? You can almost meet an emoter before you meet them. What do I mean by that? When you look at an ad, when you see their video, if they make any mention of the seller's circumstances or the emotion of the home, and how it feels and how it breathes and how it fits your growing family and starts to anything that's emotional is an early indicator of the kind of people these are. The other thing is that, man, there's so much with the motors, but it's far out. If you get this right, it's powerful. And there are some really, really particular things I do with motors that really work. The other thing is that your vibe attracts your tribe. So when we talk about emoters, you can start to assume, once you've identified them, the kind of sellers who would appoint emoters as their agent. And that's the biggest unlock, is it's less about the agent themselves and who we're dealing with, but realizing they're a gatekeeper, they're the conduit to the seller and their circumstances. An emotional agent are the ones that pick up a lot of breakups and divorces, emotional family sales after it being in the family for generations and they need to downsize, deaths, and just some really complicated circumstances. Not always, obviously, but there starts to be a little bit of a trend we can correlate to this. And again, this is through experience. Emoters work a little bit differently, where the stages of putting together a deal are less structured and they are more about a feel, felt, found exercise. So it's gut-led as opposed to purely the process. And it always, I shouldn't say always, most of the time, it's a how do I look after my seller's best interest in this scenario right here, with the questions that are being asked of me, with the deal that's being presented to me, with the buyers that have come to me. How can I look after my seller? So it becomes very emotional from the get-go. The other thing is that they are also sensitive to the stories you tell and the way that you present yourself and the narrative. If you're there with kids and they can see the dog in the back seat and it's wagging its tail, it's like, this is a happy young family. Geez, I want to get these guys a win. Or, geez, I want to get them this home. And you've done so much work before you've even spoken to the agent because you've met an emoter. The real power of dealing with emoters is less about the steps that you move through with them, but more about the story that you tell. If you've seen my video on price versus terms, there's a third lever. Surprise, it's not always just two. There's a third lever, and it is emotion. It's not one we can pull every time because transactors and processes exist that really don't, I shouldn't say don't care. They don't factor it into their process or their decision making on behalf of their sellers, right? It's omitted. Emoters, far out, I can write a paragraph, staple it to the front page of an offer and send it across, knowing that I'm going to get cut through with the agent because that's how they operate. They're heart-led. They're doing this with purpose. They feel like it's their vocation. They care and they position themselves as such. And B, again, their vibe attracts their tribe. So they're most likely going to be sitting down in their lounge room with the seller and reading this thing out verbatim, being like, we've got to get these guys this property. What do you think, Mr. and Mrs. Seller? And they're going to turn around and go, well, we appointed you because you care and now you've found this perfect buyer and they love the home. Yeah, but they haven't offered the most amount. This is more important to us though, Mr. and Mrs. Agent. Like this is a heart-led transaction. Is their price good? Yeah, it's only like 5-10 grand less. It's only 2-4% less than. Okay, but these are our buyers. Or there's this investor that will pay 10% over. Yeah, but then it's a developer and we really care about our neighbours. We're so close with the people around us. We'd hate to put the wrong person in our neighbourhood and in our street. I totally understand you. Hopefully I'm jumping around with all these people and you're kind of keeping up with the characters. But that in an essence is how we work with emoters. We tell a story through every interaction. We tell a story at every opportunity. And we make sure that it is built into our offer, that it becomes a facet of our offer, a lever that we're pulling. We're maxed out to the top capacity, but we can't physically offer you anymore because they're making this move from interstate and they've had to buy a new family car to actually cart the whole tribe up here and get some self-storage in the meantime. And they're doing it pretty tough, but this means a lot to them and they're falling in love with your home and they're so excited to keep the garden as beautiful as you've kept it over all these years. And it's a true testament to how house proud you are. And it's the best house in the street. And they've always told me that. This is how we transact with emoters. But yeah, it really needs to be said that the quicker you can do this when we're starting to transact with agents, the better. The better. And if you've got a notebook, write them down, just identify them. After a quick interaction on the phone, tell me about your circumstances. What are you looking for? What's important to you in your next home? Guys, what's your budget? What's your pre-approval? Are you ready to go? Is this the kind of home you're looking for? Have you come close on some other offers? See, I'm not even telling you who I'm talking about right now, and hopefully you can see there's been a bit of a pivot from one to another. Okay, guys, no, I can't do a private inspection because I've got my VIP booked on the Thursday and the following Tuesday night at 4 till 5 p.m. You're most welcome to come along to those. Otherwise, my vendor will be, not putting them out. My process is that on Saturday morning at 9 a.m., I'll put my pointers out the night before. I'm expecting everyone there. That's when you can ask me any and all questions. There are clues to the personality profiles of each of these types of agents in every interaction that we make. It's very rare to walk away from a conversation with an agent and be like, I have no idea the kind of agent that they are or the process that they work to. And this can be a really powerful tool. So again, I encourage you, the sooner you can do that, the sooner we can work with it. So I think what I'm going to do now is, we've spoken enough about sort of the detail behind the scenes of what these three look like. Now it's the practical application of it and a quick fire guide on how to move through to submitting an offer with each of these three agent types. Transactors. What we need to do is find out as much information as we can behind the scenes and come to these agents as prepared as possible and in transaction mode. What I've talked about with the psychology of selling and the psychology of buying before is that it is the transfer of urgency through energy. It's never more powerful than when we're dealing with transactors. If you're exuding confidence, assertion, this is the right property for you, that you're prepared, that you're ready to go to contract, this is your best and final, well-researched. Yes, we've done all the checks we need to. It's going to be a nice, clean contract. Need 6 days for finance and 3 days for a building and pest. Great. Make it easy. Sooner it goes under contract, sooner they get paid, sooner the property settles, they move on to the next. It's a transaction. Processes. Processes are the guys that are going to tell you that they've got a process. You don't need to look that hard because you can ask the question, where to from here, and they will tell you the next steps. If it's a wandering aim, if it's look, guys, we're just kind of getting a bit of feedback at this stage and we're going to try and maybe get a couple of offers from this open and then I'll do another couple if we need to, they're a transactor. A processor will be like, guys, absolutely, this is one of 3 opens that we'll do to make sure that we've got the best price in the market, give everyone a fair opportunity to see the property and to move through to the next stage. The next stage is a short list where I'll be contacting buyers for their best and final. What we're most likely going to be moving into is a multiple offer scenario. What that means is they're a processor. Scripts and dialogue, really easy to pick up that they've got it dialed, and to make sure that you're playing ball, listening to those steps, using their language back to them and being like, great, we are so excited to be part of the shortlisted round of buyers to go to the next stage. What we've done is gone ahead and prepared something that should match up exactly with what you want to be able to go to contract and to make your contracts team life easier, they're more likely to have teams, they're more likely to have admin structures. They're a Ray White, they're a Harcourts, they're a Remax, they're a LJ Hooker, they're whatever. It's going to mean that they've got the support and processes to be able to, again, work with their processes. Hell, you might even be able to, if you really want the property, Google the team, see who they do have on staff and go, I assume that Natalie, your contracts manager, is going to be the one sending it out to me. Yeah, she is. What we'll do is we'll make sure we get all the details to her, and then she'll be able to build them there. Why? Because you jumped on the website and saw that Natalie is the contracts administrator. It's black and white. And these, again, 1%ers, it might seem like it's a little bit stalky or it's a little bit over the top, but I encourage you, put your effort into this stage and you will stay ahead of your competition. It's really an exact science when it comes to that level of understanding. And our friends, the emoters. Oh, guys, that's such a cute puppy, and I can see that. Oh, what's your son's name? He looks at yeah, gives a ball of energy. Great, we're going to have the best time in the backyard for him, absolutely. And it's sun-soaked, and you're going to have such a good time raising your family. The neighbours are all really nice. I've met all the neighbours. I'm part of the neighbourhood watch. I actually live down the street myself. Obvious. We're not talking about the house. Talking about the lifestyle, what it exudes to live there, and what the home evokes, and less about the building, but more the feeling. And we know then that the questioning needs to be about the seller, their circumstances, because that is your information gathering. So answer all questions personally, relate it to a story, make it about your property journey and what this means to you. And then asking questions, because remember that motivation is key. Asking questions about the seller. You really care about the seller. You're asking them questions, and that agent is going to remember that you cared about the seller. You cared about the home and who it was owned by and their next step of the journey. This is all information gathering that can help you structure an offer that is most likely going to be signed, that we've talked about with these levers, terms that innately suit your seller. Imagine if you find out that they're moving into an older a retirement home and they need to settle on this day because their new little unit isn't vacant for another 3 months. So they're really stressed that they're going to sell their property or find the perfect buyer, but they'll need to settle in 30 days. Just go, it's okay. You slide across an offer that's 60 to 90 days or settlement date to suit seller. Oh, amazing, you care. Right? And if that's 20 grand less because you've got to put your family in an Airbnb for a couple of weeks, but that's the difference when you're getting the home or not. You're going, 30 days, but I guess we can do 60. You know now the seller's circumstances. Use that, leverage that. Don't offer anything else other than what suits the seller, and work it out in the background and adjust your price accordingly. So powerful. So hopefully that's 3 practical examples of how we engage the 3 different types of agents. And this should give you a broad understanding of why that's important, why we do it as buyer's agents, why I do it as buyer's agents. This is a little bit proprietary, this sort of stuff. But it has helped me immensely putting deals together that edge out the competition, which is absolutely my job as a buyer's agent, and to act in my client's best interest is to use this information practically in every interaction that I have with these agents. So I'd encourage you start building a little bit of a knowledge base, a bit of a database of how these agents are to interact with, because again, there's a lot of double up, but we talk about in other videos how one of the best ways to source is to go straight to the agents who you keep seeing their name again and again and again, because they're listing your kind of stock. They're talking to your kind of sellers and other buyers that could potentially be sellers. Like, they're working your area, or they're working your type of stock that you're after. They're apartment specialists, they're acreage specialists, they're equine and horse specialists, like whatever, beachfront. Like the sharper we can get in how we approach things and knowing the right agents intimately, then it's a really positive thing, and the better result that's going to yield for you when it gets to the pointy end and transaction time, because you're familiar and you're memorable and you're speaking their language. It's enough for this, guys. Let's buy better.